All right. So Reed, why don't you do a quick intro? Reed just joined yesterday. I'm pumped to have him. He's doing some really cool things in the Airbnb space. Introduce yourself real quick, if you would.
Sure. Yeah. What's happening, everybody? I am Reed Sealby. Our primary business is called Chroma Home Designs. We do short-term rental specific, performance-driven design. The Airbnb landscape has really changed in the last few years and presented a good opportunity for us to jump in and start designing properties and really kind of creating properties that differentiate themselves from other like properties in the short-term rental space. So between myself and our other two, owners in the business, my wife Hannah, and then Carlene, our design partner, we've collectively done over 250 short-term rental design projects since 2018, and primarily in Colorado, but in I think 15 or 16 other states now as well. Of the properties that we have performance data back on, we're outperforming initial AirDNA revenue projections by 49% on average. So we have a pretty good formula that works. And aside from the business, have my own kind of smaller investment portfolio. We started with like a house hack Airbnb, eventually expanded and listed the whole property. And then we have a rent by the room pad split model type midterm rental property in Arvada as well. So always, open to the next acquisition opportunity. But yeah, really excited to bring whatever knowledge I can about the short-term rental industry, and then learn from you guys with all the different ventures you're involved in other elements of real estate. So excited to meet everybody.
Love it. Well, thanks for that. Welcome in. You will get a sense for how we run these meetings, but I'm just going to jump in as you're a quick learner, I'm sure. So, guys, last week, what we talked about as we're wrapping up this barbell series is a phrase that has just stuck with me for years and years. I was fortunate to be able to work with a guy named Randy Massengale. He mentored me for 6 months. This is back in maybe 2021. Randy was a senior advisor to Bill Gates in the 2000s, and he everything he talked about was like meant, um, how to think, right? Like at our level, like how we make better decisions. And one of the phrases he always said is stop grinding, start sculpting. And this idea of like most of what it is at our phase is about removal of things, right? Simplifying things. And he had this whole analogy where he talked about, sculpting, where it's these very intentional chips that you're making to build this statue versus the tendency that we had early on in our careers. And a lot of us are, again, I'm guilty of this all the time, is this grinding away at this, right? So he uses this phrase, stop grinding, start sculpting. And I just want to encourage everybody to consider what that looks like in their own business. How do we sculpt? How do we chip? How do we make intentional moves, back away, demonstrate restraint, and move very intentionally in our business? We talked about how effective we are at allocating the resources. This is a reference to the A-timer framework, the currencies that we have. Um, that is what ultimately determines our success, right? Like we all have the same amount of time in a day, right? How well we allocate these resources is ultimately what leads to our success. Um, and I think that's what the high performers need to be doing is every quarter, pretty much as frequently as possible, at minimum quarterly. We want to look at where are all of our currencies going? What are we spending our time on, our attention, our energy? Where is our influence, going? How do we recapture and reallocate those things? Because the terrain is constantly moving, right? So this is just the process that we always go through. We have these conversations at least a couple times a year. Um, and that's what we did last time. So I introduced this. This is actually something that my father-in-law used to do with me all the time. Really, really simple. A start, stop, continue. This is a good framework to use with your team, as you're managing people or you're working on, your own application of this. It's like, what do I need to stop doing? What do I need to start doing? What can I continue doing that's working well? Very simple framework. We talked about that last week. Um, I think this is important to revisit quarterly, as we sat down at the beginning of the year and we're thinking about what our priorities are, those may have changed. So please give some thought to what are your top one, two, three priorities right now in the business, and then just asking the simple questions. What currencies are these going to require from me? A lot of you guys know I took my GC license test and passed last week, so you're looking at Mr. Official Contractor now. Very exciting, but that took a tremendous amount of attention and energy. I didn't like studying for that test. So now I can, recapture a lot of that and allocate it to the next thing, right? And so again, in previous weeks, we talked about this idea of little Oreos, this two Oreo principle. And again, to summarize this, if you eat two Oreos in a day, you're probably not going to gain any weight. You eat two Oreos a day for a year, that's the equivalent of like 50,000 calories, right? And so, again, a very obvious point I'm trying to make here is that these little things, they add up and they compound over time. So it's this process of continually pruning the garden of our currencies of our life. And we had this phrase that we say, okay, great. I'm going to recapture this currency, this Oreo, by doing this very specific thing and reallocate it to the priority, right? When we don't have enough time, when we don't have enough energy to do certain things, I mean, I think we have to look in the mirror and say, great, where is our time being spent? Where is our energy being spent? Have we had a few Oreos that have crept in over the last 3 months, 6 months, year, whatever? How do we recapture that and reallocate it? Um, so what I asked again, everybody to come with this week, and I get it. A lot of folks were not here last week. That's totally okay. Do this week. These were some of the phrases that I jotted down. And I'll just read these off real quick, and then we'll jump into, kind of discussing where we have Oreos, where can we recapture and reallocate. So I said, I'm going to recapture 10 hours per week because I finished my license. Now it's time to get on the horse and go sell, right? We got to get more business. We're coming into the spring market. So I need to make sure that I'm recapturing and reallocating what was about 10 hours a week working on studying for this and recapture it towards sales. Um, Again, some of you guys know the direction that we've been heading in the club as we're shifting towards a local Colorado chapter. I realized that I was sort of the bottleneck, again, no surprise. We all make these mistakes. I decided to bring on a board of advisors to help shape the future of this more through a recruitment process. So I spent a lot of time throughout the week doing direct outreach, trying to find these people. That's going to save me a tremendous amount of time by just leveraging a different currency, relationships. Um, I'm also going to capture, again, I've talked to some of you guys about this. I got a letter in the mail. One of my first, I guess, threats of a lawsuit on a project that I'd had. And I'll be the first to admit that this has caused a lot of pain. I don't like that. I don't like it when clients are not happy. I don't really want to go to court. So I think I just decided some things are worth just writing the check and recapturing the mental bandwidth and just move on. So I'm going to spend about 7 grand. I don't feel like I should spend that. I feel like I'm in the right. It's like, but do you want to be right or do you want to recapture all that energy that's being poured into this? So I'm just going to write the check. Those are a few things I reflected on this week that are just currencies I need more of right now. I need my energy more than I need 7 grand. So just write the check and get on with it. That was some case in points for myself. And yeah, let's open it up to discussion. Anybody got any Oreos? Anybody got any currencies they need to recapture and reallocate towards your priorities? Jake, what's up?
Howdy. I was actually thinking about this yesterday that it's been too long since I've printed out all my credit card statements and looked at what are my subscriptions. So that was something you taught me a long time ago, and it's been 9 months or something since I've done that. So I need to do it.
Yeah. Or you just, some of you guys have heard me say this, like I do this. It's pretty freaking annoying, to be honest, because I have to like update my credit card information on every site, but like I just reissue all my credit cards once every 6 months because then all these like vendors reach back out and they're like, "Hey, we don't have your credit card." And I'm like, "I'm not going to give it back to you because I'm not using that subscription or whatever right now. I'll re-up it later." Like it helps me save a few $1,000s at minimum every single year. And I don't print out the list because I'll just like I'm biased. I'll be like, "Yeah, I use that sometimes. I use that sometimes." I just cancel them. I don't cancel them. I reissue them. It's a new credit card number. And because I'm fairly lazy, I'm using laziness to my advantage because I'm too lazy to go in and type back in the credit card. I'm like, I'll do that later. Like if and when I need it. So that's a real like just low hanging fruit. If you just call up your credit card company, say, I lost my credit card, send me a new one. All these vendors will reach back out and you'll realize which ones you actually need versus the ones you're justifying in your head that you need. What else?
Well, I definitely have a few. I have a storage unit that that we started on a development project to keep a bunch of materials, and we kept it, and I've been putting materials in there, here and there, but it went from 400 to $700 a month. I should have got into the storage business a long time ago. But yeah, now we're just it's like literally just we have junk in there that we're not using for anything. And so that's one thing, definitely got to get rid of this, storage, um, which, save, at least save $700 a month. And then, yeah, me personally, I have like this massage thing that I started. I have these gold handcuffs, man, because I have this massage subscription that I get a free massage every month. I've had this thing for like 3 years. So I've like racked up like 50 free massages, but I'm not using them, and I'm still paying $80 a month. And the only reason I'm keeping it now is because if I cancel it, I'll lose all those free massages, even though I'm not using them anyway. It's like I'm just, I'm playing this whole mind game myself, like.
Yeah.
So I finally decided that, they gave me a 3 month suspension to where I could like stop it for 3 months, which is coming up to an end. And in the course of that 3 months, I got one massage. So I'm
Why don't
gonna,
you reallocate those towards me, Brandis?
I tell you what, man, before I cancel it, I'm gonna hook you up.
All right. Sounds
Shoot
good.
you. But yeah, so that's something I need to cancel. $80 a month right there. But also I do need to go through my subscriptions because I think the other day I realized I had two Disney subscriptions. Like I signed up through Hulu and I signed up when they just sent me a random text at some random time for a discount, and then I turn around and it's like, oh, I have Disney twice. I'm paying I'm paying Disney twice. So yeah, I have a few of those.
How about you, Frank?
Before you come to me, let me call someone out.
All right.
Hey, Dave, is today 75?
Oh, no, 75 was a week and a half ago.
So you recaptured some time, right?
A very small amount because I'm almost doing all the same things anyways.
Okay.
The biggest thing is that I don't do two 45-minute workouts a day. Now it's more like one that's an hour or so. But yeah, the rest of the things I still do them.
Yeah, so I just wanted to congratulate Dave on finishing 75 hard. That was that's pretty intense. But in terms
Well,
of go
and
ahead.
John did it too. John actually finished about 6-7 days before I did. So he did
Oh, wow.
he did it also.
All right.
I
Sorry, Paul.
appreciate that, Dave, but I failed it halfway through.
Oh,
Did you really? Oh man. Well, okay. Then keep him on to me.
Yeah, it's
John,
all
he
you,
can
man.
just go. He's got to stay. He's on like day 3 now, so just bring him on.
It's all you.
John, if I can fail and look like you, I'll feel good. In terms of me, we just went on the market last week, and so I'm regaining a lot of off hours time, if you will, that I need to start pouring back into get spending that time building more relationships so that we can get to the mission of what we're trying to do with this bureau. Um, not having to be at the house till 2 in the morning every night, trying to finish up to get to market has been a big plus mentally, physically, emotionally, everything.
The last 5% is probably more like 50%, huh?
Yeah.
Not 80. I don't know. Yeah, I feel that. How about you, Kyle? What's new?
You know, I wish I was going to ask for some advice, but I don't know if there's any good advice that I'm just going through it all because our business is 24/7, 365. We spend about 20,000 a month in technology. So the idea that I could just shut off my credit card and my entire team wouldn't show up at my house with pitchforks is pretty impossible. So I like do wonder how I can get some of these Oreos out of my life. But I really think it's probably just a longer process of the same, looking through all our bills and making decisions.
Yeah, that is more challenging. I certainly wouldn't. Uh, we have different credit cards for different things, you know? So, like, I have my what I call my core expenses. This is something that Dan Nicholson talks a lot about. My core expenses are the things that like I can't shut off Zoom, for example, because I need that for this business. I can't shut off QuickBooks subscriptions because I need that. Those things go on a specific credit card. Everything else goes on a different credit card. I bucket it as like core expenses and then investments. If I'm buying a subscription for, I don't know, something that I'm using to try to generate business, or it's like I'm buying this because I think it'll help me get more business, that goes on a different credit card. I don't know if that's something your accountant is doing, but that's how we set it up so that I don't cancel the credit card that is got all my core expenses on it.
That's good advice. Yeah, I'll bring that up on our finance call.
Yeah, because investments need to be held to account, like always, right? We need to be scrutinizing these investments. Like that's what they're for. And I have a tendency towards like we're going to talk about biases. The next series that we're going to start today is about like, biases is a big part of that. And it's like, yeah, I have a bias towards like I'm already paying for it, so just leave it. I find that like when you do the cancel thing, it shifts the bias towards the other direction. I use the word laziness. Like I'm lazy. I'm not going to go in and cancel the credit card as it's like I'm just as lazy to do that as I am to enter the credit card information in. So I would rather cancel everything every 6 months and then you really decide what you can really figure out what you need and what you don't need because of if you're too lazy to go put your credit card in, I mean, you probably don't need it. At least right now, you don't need it. You can always, that's the other thing is every vendor, they'll always take you back. You come back 3 months later, they're going to take your money. Like your money is still good there. So
I did that for my personal life, and it was super helpful.
cool. How about you, Reed?
Yeah, I got a pretty easy and obvious example one. Next week, we're starting the hiring process for a new executive assistant, virtual assistant from South America. And I think we're kind of forecasting that will save like 15 to 20 hours a week of my time. And just to be less in the business and focus more on like big picture strategy on the business. So that'll make hopefully a huge difference and allow me to kind of look at the bigger picture and really kind of make more big strategic decisions for where we're headed. So really, really stoked to bring somebody on board like that.
Cool. I know Jake, several guys on this call have had a lot of success doing that. Jake, John, Kyle, I think you've done some of that as well. So if you need anything related to that, just reach out. We got people who have gone through that many times.
Cool. Yeah. No, I think it'll be great. But and then touching on your earlier point, I did a like a subscription audit in January, and it's going to be like an annual thing moving forward because we my wife and I have been married for almost 3 years, and for like the past 3 years, I realized in January we've been paying double subscriptions for like Amazon Prime, Spotify, like just all this stuff that when we got married, we kept both of our individual accounts, and it probably cost me like hundreds, if not thousands of dollars over the last few years. And yeah, definitely a worthwhile practice to do. But I hadn't thought of your idea, canceling the credit card and then waiting for all of them to reach back out and just like re-engaging with the ones you want to stick with. That's a pro move.
I learned from the best. Awesome. John, how about you? What's going on?
Man, I don't got anything good right now. Um,
Perfectly optimized.
no. Yeah, right now there's a lot of my days have been really focused on that new acquisition rep that I hired, and building out the CRM that I mentioned. So I've just had those two focuses, and things seem to be going fairly right there. Definitely still trying to reel in the training on the new acquisition rep. I mentioned that I can't remember which call it was that I mentioned this on, but has experience, so I got behind on training, and I'm now trying to reel that in. So that's what I've been working on in the last week.
Cool. Yeah, I know you got a lot of clarity on these next 1 to 2 things that need to go right, so that's great. I thought I would use a case in point to illustrate. I guess I first wanted to make the point that like I'm thinking about you, Frank, as I'm saying this. Like we have a tendency to underestimate the amount of currency, so to speak, or spend that it's going to take to do something. Case in point, fix and flips. I can speak very directly to that. There's two different things, right? Like there's the time, the energy that it takes. Like you go into this and you're just like, oh, we'll just punch list. We're going to wrap this up next week. No big deal. And I've never not underestimated the amount of energy it's going to take to get through a punch list because you always find things you weren't expecting because we're just not accounting for the unexpected. Like, right? Like we just have a tendency to underestimate that. The other thought that I had as I think about flips is I have a tendency to raise like the exact amount of capital I think I'm going to need for that. And inevitably, I get to the end of the project. It took another month, it took another 20 grand, and this other project took another 20. Like I'm finding myself in a cash crunch right now because I just underestimated the amount of money I needed to raise for that deal. I'm asking it looks very inefficient on the beginning. Like you think you need 200, so you raise 200 because I don't want to raise 250 or 300 and have to pay interest on extra cash that's out there. But I'm giving a lot of thought to like, I really don't want to be in this position this coming season as flipping's kind of a seasonal thing. It flows in seasons. So I've just been given a lot of thought to my bias towards if everything goes right, that is the amount of capital that we're going to need. But it never goes 100% right. There's always variability. So I'm thinking a lot about how to raise more money, even though I probably don't need it, or may not need it, I suppose. I don't want to be in that position, and also recognizing that the closeout of a project takes you think you're like, oh, I'm gonna close this project out, and I'm also gonna do these other things this week that I want to do. And I never get those things done because it takes so much energy and attention to close out that flip. Um, so I don't know if anybody has any comments on the tendency to underestimate the amount of currency spend that certain, especially new things, are going to take. You want to try to hire somebody new, trying a new development deal, you're trying this new thing. Like we have a tendency towards rose-colored glasses. Does anybody notice that or have a case in point for that? Jake, I see you smiling as you're building a new business right now.
I can do everything and I can bend space and time.
Right. Just, I'm just gonna sheer willpower make this thing go. Yeah.
You
I
know,
can.
Paul, one of the things I think one of the lessons learned through all this for me is because we were going over budget, I tried to take on doing more stuff to try and keep those costs down. And in the end, we did keep those costs down in control, but the question becomes at what sacrifice, right? Like, would I have been better off delegating that and spending a little bit more in a bigger picture sense, even though we would have, decreased our margins a bit, would that have been a better trade-off than trying to make the numbers work, make the numbers work, make the numbers work, and take on more, right? To me, that's kind of where I think I still struggle with figuring out the balance there. How much should I be doing versus how much should I not? Like we talk about AI a lot, right? Like trying to figure out OpenClaw and how I'd leverage it and all these things. Like how much do I need to learn versus do I just need to go find somebody who knows this stuff, tell them what I want to build and have them build it?
Sure. Well, isn't that's I think that's also the root of a lot of the things that we sell, like
Yeah.
certainly somebody can renovate their house. They don't need me to do that. So like what currencies are they trading? They're trading money in exchange for time, energy, and attention. Like go take a nap. We got this, like, and I'm hammering that with clients. Like you could probably do this on your own. So why hire a contractor? Same thing with what Jake's building. Why I mean, he would probably advocate that everybody learn a certain amount with AI, and at the same time, how much time, energy, and attention are you going to dedicate to that versus just writing the check? It's the same realization I had with this whole lawsuit deal that I'm going through.
Mhm.
It's like, what do you want? Do you want money? Like these are just currency changes, Like I remember Dan Nicholson used to talk about this analogy of he had a client that was like, I really need more time with my kids and my spouse. I want to make the baseball games. But he was driving 30 minutes a day to his office, right? So it's 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back. That's an Oreo. That's, an hour a day times five. That's 5 hours a day. That's 20 hours. You can do the math. Like you want more time. Well, you just not, how about you get an office 5 minutes from your house? Right? You just recaptured a tremendous amount of time. So again, I don't know if anybody wants to add anything or case in points that they have. Dave, I see you open the mic. Go ahead.
Yeah, that actually brings up something I was looking at. About a week and a half ago, I started taking and scheduling out my entire day from like 5:30 in the morning till 7 at night and time blocking for each thing that I do. And I have found that it's made it to where now I actually have time to get these things all done instead of thinking I can take 10 pounds of stuff and throw it in a 5 pound bucket and work it through. And it's been a pain in there sometimes to figure it out, but I can look at kind of how my day is scheduled because I have certain things that are on reoccurring. They happen every single day and all that. And then I'm filling in the blocks inside of there. And it's really been surprising, even in the week and a half, how much when I get through the end of my day, I'm like, wow, I actually accomplished these things because I can look at what all I got done because I made time for each one of them. And makes it to where for me, I'm not running quite so crazy all the time.
Typing in the A timer model. I mean, we could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours. Um, what I like to remind myself is like most people don't think that they are most people. Means like, no, I'm not inefficient with my time. No, I'm not inefficient with my attention and my energy. That's what other people deal with. I don't deal with that. And the reason it's hard to see is because these Oreos are so small, they creep in and they start to compound over time. Um, so again, feel free to jump in. If anybody has any other case in points, these things are, I find them tremendously helpful to talk in case in points. Um, but this idea of the journaling that we talk so much about, these are the things that I would be giving a lot of thought to. What currencies, like what, first of all, what are my priorities? What am I trying to accomplish right now? What currencies are those going to require? Is it time? Is it relationships? Is it energy? What is it? Okay, great. Then where is all that currency going? You probably need more of it than you think you do. We have a tendency to underestimate. When everything has to fit perfectly, we know that. We talk about the system reliability stuff. When everything has to go right, and you have a lot of things that need to go right, you're driving down the probability that it all goes right. So you need this process of recapturing stuff And I tend to think that it's okay to have excess. I'd rather be sitting around sometimes with extra time than not have enough to get the things that I need to get done. Um, so again, the conversation is really give a lot of thought to this. They're hard to see. Why? Because we're so close to them. We've gotten used to those two Oreos every single night. You don't see it until it plays out for a year, but they creep in slowly. This shows up with your team. This shows up with your personal life. Shows up all over the place, and that's something we don't already know. So that diligence of really holding all your currencies to account. Let's give that some thought this week. Let's give that some effort as we journal, and think about how we can recapture that stuff and apply it to our priorities, which are constantly changing. Any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Dave Davis, yeah, what you touched on about kind of breaking down your day, like throughout the whole day and kind of seeing where your time went. I read a book earlier this year by, I think his name's Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time. And one of like the exercises in the book that he suggests is doing a time audit of a full week. And obviously as business owners, like week to week, things can change, but he said he did that and he kind of went into the week thinking, oh, I probably spend 40% of my time on this and 20% of my time on this. And then when he actually like tactically broke it down, and he recommends, I think, breaking it down into like 20-30 minute increments so you can see where like every minute of your day goes. He actually realized, he's like, what I thought I spent the most time on was really just like kind of what I enjoyed the most. What I really spent the most time on was like this administrative headache. Okay, now how do I reduce my time spent on that big bucket where all my time is actually getting zapped to? And then he realized too, he's like, in this whole week, I've spent like 30 minutes with my wife and kids. And he's like, if I really like take a step back and look at like where I want my life to go, we got to figure out how to rebalance this a little bit more. So doing like an audit or something like that. I did it in like early February, and it just really showed me like these are the real bottlenecks that are actually taking up time in my day, and how do we start to address those so I can focus on the bigger fish to fry.
Yep, we are huge advocates for doing that. We actually talked. We love Dan Martell. I like him a lot. We sort of took that read, and we have this on our Notion site. We call it a T audit. So time is important, obviously, but we also talk about attention and energy. Means like certain things that you spend your time on, they just drain you of your energy. So how do we consider it from other different types of currency? So fantastic point. I agree. This is kind of a non-negotiable for high performers. You have to look at these things frequently enough to not let these Oreos creep in. And yeah, John, I love your point about the home gym. Finally got my new house and need to get my home gym set up. So we'll compare photos here in a few weeks once I get these things bolted on. And you know what a ski erg is? You ever heard one of those? Oh man, I have one, and I haven't been able to set it up for like a year and a half because we've been at our townhome. I didn't have enough room, so I'm gonna blast these lats here and my lungs here within a few weeks. So I'm excited for that. But um, all right, fellas, anything else to add to this before we move on for today? All right, let's. Um, Dr. Jeff and I have been having a lot of conversations about the idea of what high performance really is at its core. It has so much less than it has so much to do with mastering yourself, the 6 inches between your ears. And I think this is stuff that we've all probably heard as a kid. I want to do a series on that. We're going to talk about this for the next few weeks, is like how to master the internal battle that we all deal with, our biases, our tendencies. How do we play at the highest level? Developing this phrase my dad always used with me as a kid, mental toughness. Anybody ever heard that phrase? It's one of my favorites. I think it is oftentimes incorrectly defined. I want to talk about like how to really define that today. But let me get started here. So I love this phrase. I'm not biased, you're biased. says says the biased person, right? If you think you're not biased, that's your bias, right? Like we all are. This is part of the human experience. We're all biased. And so I'm always very like interested in the person who thinks that they're not biased in any way. Because my first thought is like, well, that's your bias, right? So we're going to talk about biases. Of course, I can never have this conversation without jotting down one of my favorite phrases is that most people don't think they are most people. Let's not make that mistake because even if you're a high performer, you are still going to have biases. I think it's about more understanding those and accounting for them as opposed to trying to eliminate them. You don't get to opt out of the human experience. Sorry, that's part of it. We are born with a certain and I'll touch on that in a second, but this was something that we always talked about in engineering, and this is true in the AI space, is that humans are the most unreliable component of every system. Why are they trying to automate McDonald's and things like this? It's because humans make mistakes. Like we are the most unreliable component likely in our business. You can have, the perfect diet plan, the perfect workout plan, the perfect SOP. And if you don't follow it, well, then how do you expect it to work, right? And so, how do we address that? That's what we're going to talk about here. All right, so a little allegiance capital. Maybe the biggest constraint right now in your business is you. That's harsh, but something worth considering. We're going to talk about this idea of how to, master the self. I was listening to Phil Jackson the other day. He was talking about, Kobe and the Lakers and just yes, of course they're playing basketball. Yes, of course they're talking about the triangle offense and all these things. But why was he such a great coach? Why was he such a great leader? Because it was all about this, it's all about learning how to master your mental self. And here's the thing, biases are part of being human. You don't get to opt out of that. You just don't. Like, it's not about opting out. It's not about eliminating. It's about accounting for these things, understanding ourselves at a deeper level. I'm going to talk about like one of my biases is I'm a freaking fierce competitor. I am a fierce competitor. Sometimes I choose to compete just because I want to beat the other person. Not because that's helping me get closer to what I want, but because I want to win. And it's like, well, if you play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes, right? So it's something I think a lot about is like, what am I biased towards? Um, my experience is that 95% of entrepreneurs don't think like this. They don't think like this. They don't account for this side of it. They assume that I make great decisions all the time. Okay, well, they're operating at a disadvantage. We're going to operate by understanding these things and accounting for them. Um, and I do want to talk about this phrase, mental toughness, because I think that the conventional definition of mental toughness is kind of defined as like, I'm going to do this thing regardless of, it's like, I'm just going to will myself to the future. Um, I don't know that I would define it that way. I think mental toughness has more to do with a certain level of alertness, like understanding the terrain at a really high level. Like, do people get lawsuits? Like, is it reasonable to assume that if you do this for long enough, you're going to get sued? Well, yeah. I mean, so like, is it reasonable to assume if I flip houses for a long enough time that I'm not going to lose money? Well, I don't think that's reasonable. So how do we process this idea of mental toughness? Uh, I'm certainly fine with stopping for a second and seeing if anybody has any comments on this term, mental toughness, what this means to you, how you manifest that. Um, Anybody got any comments on mental toughness? Does it mean just barreling through regardless of the situation? Like, the idea of I reserve the right to change my mind, does that play into it at all? I don't know. Brandis, Frank, you guys open your mic. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brandis.
um, I guess for me, particular, in particular, I think mental toughness to me is it just really means just for me it's just like being able to sit in problem, like be able to sit in it, right? To really feel and to actually really actively deal with it. Take accountability first and foremost, learn from it. I mean, I've been sued 5 times on 5 different things. And not because I'm a bad guy, but just you're in the game long enough, like you said, you get sued, and I would say it's just a matter of just being able to sit in it, to deal with it, learn from it, to never shift blame, right, and to be able to move forward from it. To be able to move forward from it.
Well, and doesn't it, I like to, Dr. Jeff reminded me like mental toughness is also has to do with like creating a body of evidence that like just because you're in a new situation doesn't mean that we can't look back at all the other times we've been in difficult situations and we figured them out. It's like, yeah. Uh, just I was having a conversation with somebody in the group the other day who's going through a really tough period. And I'm like, let's look at the body of evidence. Like, you've been here before in a different situation, in different times. You've experienced adversity in life before, right? Can we draw on that to find the strength in this moment to recognize, like, just because I don't know doesn't mean I can't figure it out. And also, welcome to entrepreneurship. That's what it is. It's hard shit over and over and over again that you don't know how to solve. And the more you do that, the more you develop this capacity for mental toughness. Frank, do you have any comments?
I mean, I would say mental toughness to me is not letting your performance waver based on the conditions that you're faced with, right? Um, and
I like that.
and right in sports, man, that's typically what they talk about is the ability, despite whatever is going on around you, despite the situation, despite the time, despite the score, despite all the adversities that you're faced with, your performance stays consistent. You're locked in, you perform regardless of the same situation. I think it's the same for us, right? Like you said, when in the beginning of the project, when there's a little less pressure, are you the same person you are at the end of the project when everyone's scrambling and freaking out and you're trying to keep on top of things? Or to me, it's the ability to be consistent despite the circumstance and the ability to persevere despite the circumstance, positive or negative.
Sure.
I'll jump in. I don't know if this is exactly the definition of mental toughness, but I actually find it very empowering when I'm at my worst, in the sense that if I'm having like an existential crisis, or if we're hemorrhaging money, or if we're thinking about, all the problems, if you I find that if I kind of get to that place where it's like all the way to, okay, what are my options? Keep going or close the doors. Then it becomes actually really empowering, where it's like, well, obviously we're not going to close the doors, so I might as well just start doing some work and moving forward. And I found that those moments have made the day to day a lot easier to move forward with, realizing that, and then if you do close the doors, what, you go start another business and that has its own problems. And so that helps me stay mentally tough, I guess, is kind of pushing myself to that end of like, what are we really freaking out about here? I mean, what are our options in life? Let's just keep chugging forward.
Kyle, to use your example thing, I find kind of funny for people like that go from crisis to crisis to crisis. What's the one common thing in all those crises? Them.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's not the situation.
Um, I think there's also a skill set of being able to compartmentalize things. Sure, we've all felt that where like you have a hard day at work and you come home and you're a little bit testy with your spouse, you kind of pop off, you got a certain tone. For me, it's my tone. It's not what I'm saying, it's how I'm saying it. And that's challenging, certainly, to be able to compartmentalize these things and step on one field, step off the other, step onto the next one. Um, and their opportunities, Kyle, I love kind of what you're saying there. These opportunities are how we develop. there's people watching, your spouse is watching how you handle this. Your kids are watching, your team is watching. Like, how do you show up in adversity is important because there's people watching, people who are counting on you to handle things. And it doesn't mean stuff it down and pretend it doesn't exist. It means meeting reality for what it is and starting the process of solving it, taking steps, recognizing we've been here today before. We've got a body of evidence to suggest this. Um, any other comments? Centered and focused. Any other comments? Okay. Um, Dr. Jeff talks a lot about human mindset and Champion's Mind. I put this YouTube link here for you guys to go listen to him. I'm not going to pretend to be able to give the same impactful presentation on this because this is his information, but he basically is what he's communicating is that there's two sides of us. There's the human mindset. It's our biological hardwiring. He talks a lot about how humans are biologically hardwired to survive, like we are. If we don't survive, we can't continue the species. Like it's hardwired into us. There's a certain how you're able to jerk the wheel when you're heading into an intersection and somebody's about to T-bone you and you jerk the wheel before you can even think. Like, what is that? What is that? Well, that's the hard wiring inside of us that's trying to protect us. Fear is like embedded in all of us. And it's a survival mechanism. Like it's there because we need it to survive. However, it's not really a recipe for high performance, right? At the same time, sometimes fear is there to tell you something. I'm not a huge advocate for the like, let's burn the boats, like throw fear out the window, like let's just go all in. It's like you might not be ready for that. And that's not necessarily fear telling you something that you should ignore. At the same time, um, I thought I would jot down a few of these things. Like, here's how fear can show up, at least how it shows up for me as an entrepreneur, as a high performer in that space. The fear of getting left behind. Like you see your peers and they're growing their business, and so you're like, oh, I'm behind. Like this guy's doing 10 flips a year and I'm only doing five. Like I'm behind. I need to catch up. That's fear-based. Um, afraid of being perfect or not being perfect. So we delay taking action on it until it's 100% perfect. Well, we also know that that's not the right way to proceed. Um, I've been struggling this my entire career. The people pleaser bias. What's everyone going to think if I do this? If I shut this business down, what's everyone going to say? Are they going to think that I failed? If I talk about how I lost money on this deal, like, am I going to be seen a certain way? That's fear. Um, Dr. Jeff gave me this phrase the other day he was talking about how uh, he notices that the folks who play at the highest level, they have, they're answering callings. They're not chasing their dreams. Like, this like high self ambition, like I want to make all this money for myself. Um, versus answering a calling. Like, how is that different? He talks a lot about how this self-ambition a lot of times is fear-based. I don't know about you guys, like as a kid, like my parents paid me for good grades. Like if I didn't get an allowance, like I got paid by getting good grades and doing certain things. And I'm not saying they messed me up. What I'm saying is like ever since I've been little, I've had this weird challenge where I've sort of my self-worth is associated by how well I feel like I'm achieving. Like if I don't feel successful, I don't feel great about myself. And that's very fear-based. So I think the conversation today and what I'm hoping that we can think about over the week is like, first of all, what is mental toughness? How do we define that? What does that look like? How can we reflect on times when we've showed up really well? compile the body of evidence, so to speak? How do we define that? And then really giving some thought to like just this side, just the human mindset side. How does fear show up in the things that you do? Are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of what others might think? Like the process of this is actually a version of case. It's like collecting the information. Where does this show up? Where does this show up? And again, I like to remind everybody that most people don't think that they're most people. Most people have a tendency to think, I don't struggle with that. It's certainly going to look differently than how it looks for me because we're all very unique and different here. But I say this because like Jeff does this with me all the time, holding the mirror up and saying like, how is fear showing up in the things that I'm doing? And it manifests itself in different ways. So I don't want to cover too much today because I want to save some of these conversations for the next few weeks. I think this is worth digging into. But giving some thought to like first of all, then where are you vulnerable to fear? I find that I do things out of fear when I'm stressed or I'm experiencing pain. Like I'm going through a challenging time, so I'm looking for relief. Anything, anything just to get past this thing. I also find that it shows up when I'm doing really, really well. Things are going really, really well. And I have this fear of like, if I don't take advantage of this right now, the opportunity's going to miss. I'm not going to be able to take advantage of this. Like I have to push, push, push. So, anyways, I say this because like this is what it is in the high performance space. It's really just understanding yourself at a deeper level. We start with recognizing, well, how does it show up? So we can recognize when we're in that position again. So, this week, let's give some thought to defining mental toughness. Let's give some thought to like how does fear impact us? It's biologically hardwired into you. I promise you it shows up. It's there trying to quote protect you, but it's not necessarily always a recipe for success, right? We don't want to operate from fear at all times. We want to understand how it impacts our decisions so we can recognize it. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Great to see you guys. Quick reminder, we have our mini mastermind on the 17th at Travis's spot. If you're going to be there, please just let us know. We're trying to get a head count so that we don't run out of space. So let me know if you can make it. And if not, we'll see you at the next one. Thanks. Y'all have a great day. Bye.
See you guys. Thanks, Paul.
See you later. Bye.